Hi everyone, welcome back to Learn With Me. I'm Deborah Hanson, and today I'm going to teach you all about 2.5 for AP Human Geography, the Demographic Transition Model. On this slide, you're going to see the key terms for 2.5. I generally make a different video where I'll go through examples and definitions for each of the words because honestly, as I always say, the key to the 5 is really knowing your key terms because you have to be able to apply them to your MCQs and your FRQs. So however you decide to learn these, whether it's flashcards, Quizlets, notebooks, whatever you do, please make sure that you actually learn the key terms, not just the definition, but a real life example that goes with them. So in this video, I'm going to tell you all the essential knowledge that you need to know according to the College Board CED book, what you need to know for 2.5. And the CED question we're going to look at today is explain theories of population growth and decline. So we're going to go through all those details so you're prepared for a Unit 2 test or the final AP exam. So before we dive into the material, just want to say thank you to everybody who's hit that like and subscribe button for me, not to me, for me, who's sent me emails, who've written comments. It's really, really great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Love seeing the numbers go up. It really helps me. And so if these are helping you, if you can help me in return by subscribing or leaving me comments or hitting the like button, that really does help. So thanks. Okay, so now let's talk about one of the most important models in population geography, and that's the Demographic Transition Model, or the DTM. The DTM shows how a country's population changes over time as it develops economically and socially. It explains the shifts in birth rates, death rates, and overall population growth that happens as countries move from pre-industrial to post-industrial societies. So here's what it shows. In early stages, both birth and death rates are high, so population growth is slow. As healthcare, sanitation, and food supplies improve, death rates fall, but birth rates remain high, leading to rapid growth. Later, as education, urbanization, and access to family planning increases, birth rates start to drop, slowing growth again. In most developed countries, both rates are slow and population growth becomes stable or even declines. So we usually show this model on a graph or diagram with separate lines for birth rate, death rate, and total population, divided into distinct stages that represent levels of development. So here's a tip to remember. The DTM connects population change with economic and social development. So as countries develop, populations move from high growth to stability. This model helps geographers predict future population trends and understand where countries are in their developmental journey. I'm just going to give you a little overview of the 5 stages of the demographic transition model step by step, but what we're going to do in the next slides is I'm just going to go through each of the stages in a little bit more detail. So let's just talk about the different stages kind of in a basic way. So stage 1 is your pre-industrial society. This stage represents pre-industrial societies like early human civilizations before 1750. So we don't really have any stage 1 countries anymore in the world. Stage 2 is early industrialization. This is what happened during the Industrial Revolution in Europe, and it still happens in many developing countries today. Stage 3 is late industrialization. And in stage 3, birth rates start to decline as societies become more urbanized. Women gain access to education and contraception, and social norms begin to change. Stage 4, post-industrial society. Countries in this stage are highly developed, like Japan, the United States, and most of Europe. And then the last one is stage 5, which is declining population. And this happens because of aging populations, low fertility, and sometimes economic pressures that discourage people from having children. So countries like Japan, Germany, and Italy are in this stage today. So here's a tip. As countries move through the stages of the DTM, they transition from high growth to stability, reflecting the connection between population change, economic development, and modernization. So in the next slides, we're going to break down each of those stages so you can really understand what is happening at each level. Let's start with stage 1 of the demographic transition model, also known as the high stationary stage. In this stage, both the birth rate and the death rate are very high, which means the overall population growth is slow and stable. What's society like here? Well, in stage 1 societies, they're agrarian and traditional, relying on subsistence farming and simple tools. There's limited healthcare, poor sanitation, and very little access to education, which keeps both birth and death rates high. So why are the birth rates so high? Well, 1, there's no access to family planning or contraception. 2, families have many children to help with farm work. 3, high infant mortality means parents have more kids to ensure that some of them survive to adulthood. And then why are the death rates so high? Well, 1, frequent disease outbreaks. 2, poor medical care and limited doctors. 3, unclean living conditions and unsafe water. The age structure of these societies is youthful. There are lots of children and very few elderly people. So where would you see stage 1 today? Almost nowhere. No modern country is still in stage 1, but it represents pre-industrial societies before the Industrial Revolution. So if any of you took AP World, you probably know all about the Industrial Revolution. Here's a tip. Remember stage 1, high birth rates plus high death rates equals very little population growth. It's the starting point for understanding how societies evolve through the DTM. So now let's talk about stage 2 of the demographic transition model, known as early expanding stage. This is the stage where populations really start to boom. In stage 2, the birth rate stays high. Families are still having lots of children, but the death rate drops sharply, and that's the key change. When births stay high but death falls, the population grows very quickly. So why does the death rate drop? Well, it's mostly because of improvements in healthcare, sanitation, and nutrition. So think of cleaner water, better medical care, and more reliable food supplies, so that helps people live longer, especially children. So, but notice that the birth rates stay high for a while. Why? Well, because cultural habits to take time to change, right? Families are used to having many children, and partly because of tradition, and partly because they're still expecting some children may not survive, even though survival rates are improving. So that means that stage 2 countries often have a young growing population, and we call that a youthful age structure. You can see it clearly in the population pyramid for Ethiopia in 2014. On this slide, the base is really wide, showing lots of young people are being born. Stage 2 is typically developing countries that are just starting to industrialize, and that's not rich yet, that they're making progress in health and sanitation. So here's the tip for the exam. When you think of stage 2, remember this formula. Death rates fall, birth rates stay high. Population explosion. That's what makes stage 2 such a big turning point in population growth. Moving on to stage 3 of the demographic transition model, the late expanding stage. At this point, countries are becoming more industrialized and urbanized, and we start to see major changes in population patterns. First, let's look at the birth rate. It declines significantly. Why? As societies modernize, people move to cities, women gain access to education, family planning becomes more common, and in urban settings, children are no longer needed as farm labor, and raising kids becomes much more expensive. So families choose to have fewer children. The death rate is already low, but it continues to decline slowly thanks to improvements in medicine, sanitation, and just overall living conditions. Now, what does that mean for population growth? Well, since births are falling but death remains low, the population still grows, but it's slower and more stable compared to the rapid boom we saw in stage 2. So in terms of age structure, you're going to start to see a more balanced population with larger groups of adolescents and working age adults, not just children. This stage is typical of developed or industrialized countries, places that have moved beyond basic industrial growth and are developing socially and economically. So when you think of stage 3, remember this: birth rate drops, death rate starts to stay slow, and growth slows down. It's the transition towards a balanced, stable population. Okay, stage 4 of the demographic transition model, also known as low stationary stage. At this point, the country is fully industrialized and developed. Both the birth rate and the death rate are low, and as a result, population growth is stable or very slow. Let's start with the birth rate. So, families are having fewer children, often by choice, and this happens because of urban lifestyles, better education, and widespread access to family planning. In cities, kids are expensive to raise, right? Women are more likely to focus on their careers or higher education, so again, the birth rates remain low. The death rate also stays low because of advanced healthcare, modern medicine, high living standards. So most people have access to safe water, good nutrition, strong healthcare systems, so therefore life expectancy is long. So we look at age structure, it's balanced, but with a noticeable increase in older adults. If we That's because people are living longer while fewer babies are being born. So this stage is typical of developed countries such as those in Western Europe, North America, and parts of East Asia. So when you think of stage 4, remember, low birth rates plus low death rates equals stable population. This stage reflects modern developed societies where population growth has leveled off. Oh, and by the way, if you want to see these full slideshows, you can check the link below to my Teacher Pay Teacher store, and I have all the slideshows with all the information you need, study notes, study guide, everything you need to prepare for this unit test or the exam. So we're going to look now at the last stage of the DMT, or sorry, the DTM, the DMT, the TTM. Okay, we're looking at stage 5. So it has some demographers believe it's emerging with the most highly developed countries. In stage 5, both birth rate and death rate are low, but there's one key difference. The birth rate falls below the replacement level, and that means fewer children are being born than are needed to replace the current population, leading to a negative or declining population growth. So why are the births so low at this stage? Well, there's several causes: advanced education, career focus, especially among women, widespread access to family planning and contraception, changing social values where people delay or choose not to have children. And in many cases, the high cost of living and raising children in modern urban societies really discourages people from having kids. The death rate remains low thanks to a continued access to high quality healthcare, strong living standards. However, since fewer babies are being born, the population begins to age. The proportion of elderly people grows larger while young people or the young population shrinks. And this increases aging population, which can lead to challenges such as labor shortages, rising healthcare costs, economic strain as fewer workers are supporting those who are retired. So countries like Japan, Italy, and Germany are often cited as examples that may be entering this stage 5 phase. So here's what you do. When you're thinking stage 5, remember very low birth rates, very low death rates, population decline. It's a sign of success in development, but also a new challenge for sustaining growth and balance in society. So now that we've gone through all 5 stages of the demographic transition model, we're going to explain changes in birth and death rates. And let's take a deeper, further look at it and ask, why do death rates rise or fall in the first place? Well, that's where the epidemiological transition model comes in, or the ETM. And I'm going to be really honest, ETM is a lot easier than saying epidemiological. So we're going to say ETM from now on in the video, okay? The ETM focuses on the causes of death in each stage of the demographic transition model. While the DTM explains how populations changes, the ETM explains why. So by showing which kinds of diseases or health challenges dominate during each stage of development. So let's look at the 5 stages that we're going to talk about, which is going to do a little brief again, like we did last time, and then we'll go through the slides where I can talk a little bit more about each of the stages for you. So the first stage is disease and famine. High death rates due to infections, starvation, and poor sanitation. Stage 2, receding pandemics. Death rates begin to fall as medicine, sanitation, and nutrition improves. Stage 3, degenerative and human-created diseases. Chronic illnesses like heart disease and cancer become leading causes of death. Stage 4, delayed degenerative diseases. People living longer thanks to medical advancements that delay age-related illnesses. And stage 5, reemergence of infectious and parasitic diseases. So old diseases reappear and new ones emerge due to globalization and antibiotic resistance. Here's a tip. Think of it this way. DTM, how populations change. ETM, why people die. In the next slides, we'll break down each stage to understand how health, medicine, and technology shape population change over time. Okay, so let's start with stage 1 of the ETM, known as pestilence and famine. Sounds really lovely, doesn't it? In this stage, death rates are very high because people face constant threats from disease, hunger, and the environment. The main causes of death from pandemics, widespread outbreaks of infectious and parasitic diseases like the Black Plague or malaria. People had very little medical knowledge, and poor sanitation made it easy for diseases to spread quickly through all the communities. Environmental disasters also played a huge role. Events like droughts, floods, or earthquakes could destroy crops or contaminate water supplies, leaving people without clean water or food. That led to famine, starvation, and malnutrition, which weakened immune systems and made people even more likely to die from disease. Infant mortality is extremely high because babies and young children were especially vulnerable to poor living conditions and lack of medical care. The stage reflects pre-industrial societies before modern medicine, before sanitation or reliable food production. So when you think of stage one, remember disease plus environment plus food scarcity equals high mortality. People didn't live long, and population growth was very limited because so many lives were lost to famine and epidemics. In stage two of the ETM model, we see a huge turning point in human health, and this stage is known as receding pandemics. Here, death rates begin to decline and life expectancy increases. So what's happening behind this major improvement? Well, first, better nutrition. As agricultural techniques improve, people have more reliable access to food, meaning stronger immune systems and fewer deaths from starvation. Second, medical advancements. That starts to make a really big difference here. Vaccines, basic medicine, a growing understanding of how disease spread and to help how to control those outbreaks that once would have killed thousands of people. Third, sanitation and infrastructure improvements. Cities began building sewers, plumbing systems, and hospitals, which dramatically reduced the spread of disease. Clean water and waste management means fewer infections. Another factor is less war. As societies stabilized and industrialized, there was more peace and better living conditions, allowing for populations to grow. So when it comes to disease patterns, infectious and parasitic diseases, they still exist, but they're far less deadly and less frequent thanks to the progress in epidemiology, the scientific study of how diseases spread. This stage often corresponds with the Industrial Revolution when public health systems began to emerge in cities. So when you think of stage two, remember fewer infectious diseases, longer lifespans, all thanks to better healthcare, sanitation, and nutrition. Moving on to stage three of the ETM model, known as degenerative and chronic diseases. At this point, countries are more developed and industrialized, and people are living much longer lives. Life expectancy continues to rise, but the cause of death begins to shift. Infectious diseases like malaria or cholera are now rare, thanks to strong healthcare systems, vaccinations, and sanitation. However, as people live longer, new health challenges emerge, especially age-related and lifestyle diseases. The main cause of death in this stage are chronic degenerative diseases such as heart disease, cancer, and diabetes. These aren't sudden infections. They develop slowly over time due to factors like aging, diet, lack of exercise, smoking, or even stress. So while people are healthier overall, their lifestyles and longevity bring a new kind of health risk. This stage often represents highly industrialized nations where healthcare is advanced, but sedentary lifestyles and modern habits contribute to these diseases. So when you're thinking of stage three, remember, people live longer, but chronic and degenerative diseases become the leading cause of death. Now in stage four of the ETM, we see what's called delayed degenerative diseases. And at this stage, life expectancy is high, meaning people are living much longer thanks to major improvements in medical technology and healthcare. Diseases like heart disease, cancer, they still exist, but people are able to manage them with treatments, medication, and medical devices like the ones shown in the picture, which helps monitor and support patients with chronic conditions. So while chronic diseases don't disappear, they're delayed and managed due to medical progress. The key to remember in stage four is that people live longer, but with diseases that are controlled, not cured. Finally, let's look at stage five of the ETM, often called reemergence of infectious and parasitic diseases. At this stage, many countries are highly developed and have already gone through the earlier phases of improving health and sanitation. But now there's a new problem that begins, and some old ones return. First, the death rate starts to increase again, mostly because of aging population. And where there are more elderly people than young people, more deaths occur naturally. And this can lead to a negative natural increase rate, the NRI. We talked about that in Unit 2. Meaning more people are dying than being born. So what's causing this shift? Well, let me break it down. First, it's disease evolution, pathogens. The bacteria and virus that cause illness, they're evolving. They're becoming drug resistant, making it harder to treat infections with standard antibiotics or antivirals. Two, poverty. In less wealthy areas or within poorer populations, overcrowding, poor sanitation, and limited healthcare allow diseases to spread quickly. Last, global connectivity. With modern travel and trade, diseases can spread across the world faster than ever. So, for example, like HIV and AIDS, COVID-19, and other pandemics show how global movement allows outbreaks to reach every continent. We all lived through COVID-19. We know that that's what happened. So, even in advanced societies, new infectious diseases reemerge, reminding us that health challenges are never going to fully disappear. They're just changing forms. So, think about it this way: when you think of stage 5, remember re-emerging diseases plus aging population equals rising death rates and a negative NRI. NIR, sorry about that. It's the stage where medicine races to keep up with our ever-changing world. And again, we lived through a pandemic. We know that this is what we're going to be doing, and we know we're going to continue to do this as time goes on. Okay, so that is the essential knowledge for 2.5, the demographic transition model, especially for the question, the CED question, explain theories of population growth and decline. If you found that helpful, please hit that like and subscribe button for me. I really appreciate it. I love the comments, the emails also. Please, I'm happy to answer anybody. If you have any questions, you can leave them below or you can send me an email. It doesn't matter, whatever works best for you. Thank you so much for listening. See you next time.